Welcome to the Drexel interview. I'm Paula Morantz-Cohen, talking to you from Drexel's Westfall Gallery. Today our guest is Constantine Papadakis, president of Drexel University. President Papadakis, or Taki, as he's known to friends and colleagues alike, has done an extraordinary job since his arrival here in 1995. Under his leadership, Drexel has tripled freshman applications, doubled full-time enrollment, quadrupled university endowments, and quintupled research funding. He has helped spearhead new programs, including the acquisition of a medical school. These are impressive achievements, and they make our president one of the most successful and prominent leaders in the field of higher education today. President Papadakis, Taki, welcome to the Drexel interview.
Hi, Paula. I'm glad to be with you.
Glad to have you here. I'd like to start by having you tell us a little bit about your impressions of Drexel when you arrived here from the University of Cincinnati, where you had served as the Dean of the College of Engineering. You came from Cincinnati to Philadelphia in 1995. What did you see?
And my impression was twofold. One, that the academic enterprise of Drexel University was doing well. And number two, that the management of Drexel University didn't know what they were doing.
Okay. Can you be a little more specific about that? And tell us what the actual state of the university was at that point in time.
Well, the university was in a very tight situation. It had about three years that had given 0 raises to the employees. So there weren't too many happy campers at Drexel at the time. They also, the management had started using endowment funds, unrestricted endowment funds, to cover losses in their profit, in their operations every year. So it was a fairly serious situation. The Drexel credit was not very much worth it. I joke more or less saying that it was junk bonds at the time, but yeah, probably was, if I recall correctly, was a B minus, and so it was not even investment grade rating at the time. So the university was not doing well. And in my mind, again, I was trying to figure out what is needed to be done, because if you don't figure it out before you accept the job, and then you get the job and then you don't know how to do it, that could be a very embarrassing situation. Mm-hmm. So I was fairly convinced by the time that I accepted the appointment as the new president of Drexel that the reason for the hardships of Drexel was that the fixed costs of the university were so high. Mm-hmm. And the university size had dropped so low that the university could not handle the number of students they had without losing money. And that's why my first effort when I came on board was recruit. There was nothing else that we said to the employees. We said, bring in good quality students. Mm-hmm. And we need to increase the size of the institution and make it such that then we spread the unit costs and the fixed costs over a bigger base, over a larger base of students, and therefore, you know, we fixed the situation within 1 year.
Within 1 year. I remember that, having been here. Right. So recruitment was the initial goal and key. Yes. But what I find interesting about what you say then is that you were challenged by the state of Drexel, the dire state of Drexel. That was one of the things that in a way appealed to you in coming here?
Absolutely. I would never accept the job of a president in a situation where I would be a ceremonial figure. I like to be part of the I say I like to roll my sleeves and work with my colleagues in the trenches. And I thought that Drexel was perfect.
It was a challenge in a way. You talk about recruitment. It's a very specific, it's a very clear-cut objective. And yet, in the course of the almost 10 years that you've been here, I guess it is almost 10 years, you have transformed this university from a regionally respected institution to a world-class institution. And I wonder if that was your vision, your goal when you came, or whether you were thinking in terms of these smaller solutions, or was that always in your head? Was that there from the beginning?
If you noticed, I said earlier on that number one, the academic fabric of the institution was intact, and number two, that the management was not doing so well. So I was thinking of how to bring the university to the level that it deserves. You have to remember that back in the 50s and early 60s, Drexel was competing with MIT.
Absolutely.
And so it's not that we took the university to a new height. We took the university to a height where they have been before. And also, again, I like to study history, not history in general, but the history of the institutions I lead. And I felt that it was so important to understand where Drexel came from in depth. And so I knew that the Drexel quality of education was proeminent in the United States back in the, after the Second World War. And also I knew that Drexel had reached a height of about 8,500 full-time undergraduate students in the mid-'80s. And then over a 10-year period and the two unfortunate presidencies, it lost half of its students.
It dropped.
Half of its
dropped
students.
To what, 45?
To 4,500.
Amazing, yeah.
Full-time undergraduate students. Now we're back to 9,000, and we're still not full.
Right.
And as you probably have heard, I'm taking the next step forward. By the way, my presidency is 8 years now, not 10, not yet. But in the next 2 years, 3 years, we will actually increase another 30% our full-time undergraduate enrollment, and we will increase the quality also at the same time.
I see. And do you think that will be the point at which you'd want to stop the growth, or is there no limit?
I will never stop.
Okay. I thought you were going to say that. You have forged ties during the period of your presidency with many figures, economic, social, political, in the Philadelphia and generally the Pennsylvania region. I wonder if you would address how that's helped in the mission of the university as you see it.
I believe that I'm one of a few presidents of private universities who have forged the relationships, very strong relationships with the state politicians and with our political representatives in Washington, D.C. Right. So my involvement has been dual, if you wish. Actually, in a way, it is a three-dimensional perspective, because when Governor Rendell was former mayor of Philadelphia, he was visiting Drexel almost every other week for some event, for some purpose, and so we had created an exceptional tie with the city. The reason for all this is that Drexel is an engine of economic development. When we started increasing the number of our students and, of course, the faculty, because remember, today we have 17,000 students, full-time and part-time, undergraduate and graduate, versus 9,000 7 years ago, and we have 5,300 employees. 5,300. We are the 10th largest employer in the city of Philadelphia. Now, we only had 2,000 employees 7 years ago. So in addition to bringing in 3,000 jobs to Philadelphia, we also brought in about 5,000 undergraduate students full-time. This is the equivalent of another 2,500 jobs in the economy of the city, as per a study done by the Pennsylvania Economy League about 5 years ago, who took Drexel specifically, and they looked at the economic impact of our students to the economy of Philadelphia.
Because of the way they feed into the economy.
And because of the co-op.
And the co-op.
Exactly, right. So we, when you think of relationships, the relationships have to be two ways. They have to benefit both partners. So we benefited the city of Philadelphia immensely. Number one, from the growth that we undertook. Number two, because we were very eager to take over the medical school back in 1998, at a time that there was a danger of Philadelphia losing 13,000 employees from the 8 hospitals of the Allegheny health system at the time of their bankruptcy. So because Tenet Healthcare Corporation and Drexel stepped on the plate to take over the hospitals and the medical school, we averted the liquidation of the system November 11, 1998. I'll never forget that date. And we saved about 13,000 jobs that would have been lost to Philadelphia. So we have made major contributions to our city. So that's why it is natural to be connected with our representatives there. At the state level is different. At the state level we had a great connection with our representatives because the state invests in us. We are one of the non-preferred universities in Pennsylvania who receive some funding from the state. That's very unusual for private universities to have this kind of a priority in the funding of a state. But there are two situations here that are very different than most states. Pennsylvania has 50% of the bachelor's degrees that are granted every year come from private universities. So we save the taxpayers an enormous amount of money because our students are not being subsidized by the taxpayers, and there are 50% of them. And so the cost per degree for the taxpayer in Pennsylvania is about $10,000 compared to almost $25,000 for a state like Kentucky, where there are very few private universities.
I see.
So we benefit also, being private universities, we benefit the state considerably, and with the co-op that Drexel has, we further return tax dollars to the state because our students pay taxes.
I see.
Okay? So again, that has created a partnership that is lasting, and it is based on mutual respect and is bipartisan. Every year I go to Harrisburg specifically to spend one day and visit our friends to give them a report of how well Drexel spent their money and what did we get for it. And then I invite the legislators to a banquet where we can sit around and think and discuss about the past year and the year to come. You would be surprised that probably I'm the only president in Pennsylvania that is doing this, that I'm giving a report on my report card every year to our representatives in the House and also to our state senators.
That is surprising, but we benefit from your doing that.
Of course.
Because then they know what we contribute.
Yes.
I did not realize that was the case, but was this an initiative that you sort of came up with? Was there any role model elsewhere that you imitated, or did it somehow
No,
just
it
come
just made
to you?
sense.
It made sense.
It made sense.
Okay. Well, I wonder why other universities